Boom, there we go. It's the Leafs Weekender, and sitting beside me is someone you've seen here before. Finally got him back on the show. The man, the myth, the legend, the gift master himself, Mr. Omar. How's it going tonight, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Leafs coming off a big win, so that's always great. But happy to be back. Happy to be out beyond.
It's always awesome to have you on. And speaking of awesome, our friends over at Boxing Rock Brewing Co., they're the sponsor of this show. So shout out to them over the holiday season. Check them out if you're on the East Coast, or if you want to order in this right here, Boxing Rock Brewing Co., the absolute big beer for the big game, the big podcast with my friend right here, Mr. Omar, or TikTok if you know him over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. The Maple Leafs this week, a week that looked like it could have been disaster, but they picked up points in each game, which is not too shabby. John Tavares picks up his 1,000th point. Jones gets a shutout. Matthew Nyes looks like an absolute beast on Saturday night to great Kyle Dubas. The Leafs beat the Rangers. There's so many things we can get into. What amazed you most about this week for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah, I think the ability to, still have success despite the quote-unquote chaos, if you want to call it that. I think it was an interesting week. I think if you're a person that is very critical of the Leafs, you kind of hold them to a standard of how they can play, and you kind of have to remind themselves, like, either more than or at least half of the team is sick with something. And it got to a point where on Saturday's game, Matthews and Brody don't play. Matthew Nyes missed a pair of games. He just came back. So it's like you're looking at the rest of the team, and it's like, okay, well, the team may not be feeling its best right now. And then they end up producing anyway, and they end up getting results. And there's some games where it's just like it's just typical Leafs craziness. I mean, you score 5 goals in one period, and you get to overtime, and I remember that game just watching it like, okay, they're gonna lose like 5-4, and then Matthews gets the other one. It's like, okay, and then they end up losing anyway. So I think a week like this, like you just expect to try to see how many points you can get and kind of chip away at the process there. But I think this week definitely is a big resilience week for the team. And I think if you're Brad Treliving, you have to like what a lot of the players that he brought in did on Saturday. Max Domi has a great night. Nora Gregor scores. Simone Benoit, William Lagesson had great games as well. Martin Jones, to your point, gets a shutout as well. Tyler Bertuzzi has 3 assists, all of them which were wicked. So I think overall it's a great week for the team, and again, especially with the illnesses that was going around.
Yeah, well, for me, though, the big thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs this week is showing what their depth can do. And I know a lot of people, a lot of the cynics, so to speak, are saying, well, these players who are playing right now will not be available for the Maple Leafs in the playoffs. They're not guys you can run with, not guys you can use. But for me, I'm like, well, I don't know if you've watched the playoffs, guys, but a lot of these depth players do end up getting in a pinch here and there to help their teams when it's a long run a team goes on. So a guy like Benoit, a guy like Lagesson, how they'll even go on the forward group and start saying the Pontus Holmbergs, the Bobby McMahons, these are valuable experience games for them to start to build something. And look at Vegas last year. How many goalies did they go through to win the Stanley Cup? So having Martin Jones come in and post a shutout and also relieve Mr. Elias Samson, or no, it was Joe Wool, and come in and save that game as well and get another victory. So I'm looking at it like this and say, well, this is great. And also it looks good on Brad Treliving because the guys you brought in mix and fit well with the system after everybody was kind of like, I don't think Bertuzzi's going to work. I don't think Domi's going to work because it wasn't meshing early on. As we've said on this show a bunch of times, it's about finding the right spot for guys and getting them comfortable in that role. And I think so far, Sheldon Keefe has done a good job now of getting that done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to the playoffs, we always, yes, the star players are going to be the star players on every team. I mean, ideally, but like it's always those like depth performances that make people kind of like go like, oh, where did that come from? Or again, it's like when you get to free agency on July 1st and you see a player get like that 5-year, $5 million contract, and it's like, why? It's like, oh yeah, because they have that one stand-up performance in the playoffs. But like your depth needs to show up for you, especially in those games. And like, by no means am I comparing player to player, but like you think of Tampa Bay, for example. Yes, Stamkos, Kucherov, Victor Hedman, but like those years where they won, I think, back-to-back cups. that
Yep.
third line, Yanni Gord, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, like that was a strong line for them. And again, that
Yep.
was the third line. That's their bottom six. So even though they may not be the flashiest topic, but like your depth still does matter. And I
It
think
does.
games like this where you can have every players have that next man up mentality and perform. When you look at the Leafs blue line, just like last year, they're getting decimated with injuries. Liljegren just came back, but Connor Timmins, Lagesson, Benoit, Max Lajoie has gotten to some games here or there, but like, they've had players being able to fill in those gaps and have steady performances. Obviously, some better than others. So I think overall this entire week can be nothing short of a success for the Leafs, for Brad Treliving, and especially those individual players who who knows what happens heading into April or maybe in the first round. Maybe you have a couple of injuries here or there, but I think now you at least have an extra set of confidence that those players can play games for you if you need them to.
No, and I like that factor because these are the guys you go chasing after a trade deadline
Yeah.
to kind of bolster your roster. Now the Leafs look at it and say, well, hey, why don't we go for a bigger home run on a trade? We have the depth guys we need already, at least on defense, and I think the forward group is starting to come too. There's still guys down there. Hello, Alex Steves, that needs to get an opportunity to come up here and make a little noise too. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for what has happened so far with this roster and the guys starting to turn corners like Domi, like Bertuzzi, and I keep going through the lineup. And even Ryan Reeves, I think he had a couple strong showings. Not this week, but last week. Really looked like that fourth line was coming together with him on it, and he was starting to play that more physical role. Unfortunately, Cotter Rutten kind of took himself out for a little bit, but already riding the bike, and looks like he avoided the worst of that injury, so that's not too shabby. The Leafs coming up this week, though, they have the Rangers, they have Buffalo and Columbus. So they have two teams they've already faced. And, of course, Buffalo sandwiched in the middle, which is always a tough out for the Maple Leafs no matter what. I want to know, what do you think of this week? Where do you think the Leafs fall on this one? Is it going to be a clean sweep for you, or is it what's the record for you this week?
I don't know if it'll be a clean sweep because, again, for many years, Buffalo always finds some way to make it difficult for the Leafs. I can see the Rangers being a win there, not because it's going to be easy, but that's a game the Leafs will definitely show up for. I think the first time they played this season, at least the most recent one, the Leafs were up 4-1. Rangers made it a little bit more interesting, but the Leafs ended up getting the 7-3 win. So the Rangers aren't going to forget about that. So they're probably going to want to try to get some revenge there. And obviously the Leafs will be ready for it. They're a top team in the East, top team in the division, definitely. Columbus is Columbus, and they're going.
They can score. Let's give them credit. They can score. Their goaltending and defense may be porous, but they can definitely score. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL, and no one can take that away.
But they are making some roster decisions that are a little puzzling. You have Fantilli on the fourth line for some reason, and if that continues, like I can see them just sending him to the World Juniors. I don't know if that is in the cards there, but I don't know. Like it would make sense. I mean,
it would.
I don't know, like why have him play what, like 9 minutes on the fourth line where you can just have him, put him in a position where he can be a leader on this World Junior team. Yes. So maybe that's happened. And if he ends up going, then obviously that makes the team weaker. Patrick Laine, I think he got a release. He's going to be out for like 6 weeks. Yeah. So like the team scoring wise is taking hits, and they can say we want to get the Leafs back for that that five goal period, but I don't know about that one. So I think the Leafs, I'll give them a 2-0-1 record. And that last one is either like an overtime or a shootout loss to Buffalo, because we always know those games end up being wonky anyway.
It's so weird with Buffalo. It doesn't matter, especially I don't know what it's called now. KeyBank Center is what I'll call it. I think it's still that. But when we play there, it's just you may as well put 2 points on the board for Buffalo. I know in the Austin Matthews era it's been a little different, but I know that's a tough out for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll go 2-1 this week. I do think they beat the Rangers. I do think they learned their lessons from CBJ and really put their foot on the neck, so to speak, and win that one. But for Buffalo, I just see that being a loss. I just do for whatever reason. I don't see it being good. I think Tage Thompson pops off, and I think Rasmus Dahlin goes off their Austin Matthews a little bit.
Mhm.
Those two always seem to have a little bit of battle going on too. So I think it'll be 2-1 for the Leafs this week. But hey, still 4 points out of a possible 6. We'll take it any day of the week.
Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts, though, on this team so far, the Toronto Maple Leafs as a whole. We touched on some of the players here so far, but what are your thoughts going through this lineup? Obviously, Matthew Nyes coming in, looking like he has a little bit of pop. I still say this kid's got a large ceiling ahead of him.
Mhm.
He's really just figuring out how to use that frame at the NHL level. We saw it last night against Pittsburgh. Then you go to the second line. Bertuzzi's really starting to find some chemistry with JT, whether it's Marner or Willie Nylander on that line. And then the third line, man. Robertson finally gets his everyday NHL shot with Domi. Yarncroke, everybody loves him. I wish everybody would have loved him from the beginning of the season last year
Mhm.
instead of just coming onto it now. This guy is what we've said he is. He's a Swiss Army knife, plays anywhere you ask, doesn't complain, puts in the effort. And then the fourth line, rotating cast with David Kampf and Noah Gregor. But Noah Gregor, to me, chef's kiss, man.
Oh yeah.
That guy is I don't want to see him on the top line. And the only reason why I say that, it's not because I don't like his play. I
Mhm.
just think it's so much better to have a guy like that with some explosiveness in the bottom 6 because it gives you a little bit more jam and pop down there when you've been missing it. And when
Yeah.
you take that away from the bottom 6, it kind of loses that muster, especially on the fourth line where no one's expecting a guy with that tenacious of a forecheck and that foot speed to be down there. And
Yeah.
his hands are not too shabby either. As Clark Monroe, who's usually on the show, would say, good Western WHL guy, man, put up some major points not too far from him. So, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Like I think when it comes to Gregor, I agree 100%. I think he's a player that you would love to have in your bottom 6 because I think he just catches people off guard. I don't think you expect a player that fast to be on the fourth line.
Yep.
And sometimes I'll be watching the penalty kill, or I'll just be watching a shorthanded shift. And then Jake McCabe, for example, has I don't know what activated, but he's been making some Eric Carlson, like prime Eric Carlson passes.
Yes.
Just finding people mid stride, blowing through the zone. And just Gregor's speed is just so shocking sometimes. And that I see it. I see it happening like a playoff game. The Leafs are desperate need of a goal. One pass takes off, has the shot,
yes.
And that's all you need. And I think that's why players like Gregor are so significant. And I think when it comes to the team overall, this last game against Pittsburgh, yes, Pittsburgh is not the team that they once were. They're going through their issues. Their power play is I get it. But this game really stood out for me because the Leafs had the lead and never for a second gave Pittsburgh any shot of getting back into the game. There are some other times where, especially I think the last 2-3 weeks, where the Leafs have had really strong first periods. Second period starts and they're like, okay, we're good. And then they let the opponent get back in, and then they're like, okay, well, no, we want to win the game, so they'll score one goal here or there. But that game, Pittsburgh had nothing. They had shots, but none of them were of any consequence, especially in the first period. They had nothing going on in front of
One thing I
Jones.
liked about Saturday's game too is the F around and find out kind of mentality.
Exactly. Yes.
They stood up for each
Absolutely.
other. You come near the goaltender, we're running you. I don't care if we're both getting a penalty or if I'm getting a penalty. They were one for all and all for one in that game. And those games, when they do that, they did it early in the season. The first 3 games, they were like that, especially in the Minnesota game early in the season there.
Yeah.
They really had that where Gio came in looking like an eagle flying over top of everybody.
The top rope, literally.
Yes, it was amazing. But those moments right there, like that game, I know it was a 7-0 walk of the Pittsburgh Penguins, but still, it's a galvanizing thing when throughout that entire game, they stood up for one another. There was pushback. It didn't matter when it was 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. They were still playing the same way. I think the only person who kind of felt bad was Kyle Dubas.
Yep.
Or not Kyle Dubas, was Sheldon Keefe for Kyle Dubas. Of course, Kyle Dubas felt bad. Crowd was getting on him. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Sheldon Keefe kept the A unit off for the power play.
It was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. I'm watching the power play. I saw David actual Kampf. I was like, oh, Sheldon. Like, I get it. You don't want to run up the scoreboard, but man.
Run up the scoreboard.
Yeah, you want to talk about that. But going back to the nice thing is that it's not like the nice fight happened when they were up 4-0. I'm pretty sure it was only 1-0 at that point. Like, it was still pretty early in the game. And if you're Max Domi, right? Like, the entire offseason, you have Max Domi, Ryan Reeves, Tyler Bertuzzi being asked the same question over and over again. What are you going to bring to the team? What are you going to bring to the team? And their answer was the exact same thing. Oh, toughness, play my game, stand up for yada, 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 right? So if you're any of those three players, now it's just Domi and Bertuzzi, anytime things go down, when what hits the fan, you're probably going to be expected to do something. Now, I don't know if there was ever a moment where Domi or Bertuzzi thought that the shoe would be on the other foot and that someone would stand up for them.
Yep.
So when I'm watching Matthew Nyes just see Domi fall, he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know if it was like a hit from behind. Again, it ended up just being a accidental whatever high stick, right? And Nyes said, "You know what? I don't care. We're going." And that, I think, is so significant. And I used to be a person that was like, you know what? I don't care if Matthews fights or if Nylander fights. It doesn't matter. And again, year after year of seeing certain things and seeing certain teams and certain habits make their way into the playoffs, that mentality has changed. And I'm like, you know what? No, screw it. Everyone thinks you're the softest team in the league. It was a big deal this season where they had to have a team meeting about it. So when I'm seeing Matthew Nyes, his first game back after missing 2 games, score a goal, and then get into a fight with someone because Max Domi just fell, or again, fell to the ice, I think that's so significant for team building. And then again, it trickles everywhere. Simone Benoit has been doing that all season. You get anywhere close to the front of the net, you're getting your whack, 2-hand, push, whatever. William Lagesson grabs people for fun. Just for you even get even think about going anywhere near the crease, you're getting grabbed. And then you have instances where Sidney Crosby, who's pretty frustrated. I think it's like a 5-0, 6-0 game at this point.
Yep.
Trying to take a couple of whacks of Jones to get the puck in, and then Tavares is like, no, John Tavares goes up to Crosby. No,
Gentleman, no. John Tavares.
Yes. Full robotic John Tavares. Connor Timmins is in there as well. So it's something that just spreads out throughout the entire team, and you need that. You need that, because if I'm Domi and Bertuzzi and I'm going to throw everything on the line to for the team, for everyone else on the team, it's great to know that everyone else has the same mentality as well. Again, we're not talking about going around and headhunting people, but when things go down, having that response, I think, is significant. And that for, I don't know, just seeing that, I was like, wow, this team is different. Yes, I think this one is the one moment. This is one example of it, but I think time and time again, we've gotten more examples of this team just willing to stand up for themselves. And that's all we've wanted for the longest time.
Well, the past couple of weeks, we've seen Mark Giordano blow a fuse and go after people for throwing hits. Jake McCabe, same thing, threw a big hit, had to answer for it. Yep. Domi's gotten in the mix-up a couple of times. Now you have Nyes doing it. Here's the thing. How excited were we all when Austin Matthews dropped the gloves with Steven Stamkos in the playoffs against Tampa? We don't want to see Austin Matthews do that. But at the same time, it was like, hey, finally, Matthews said, you are going to around and you're going to find out that I'm a big boy and I can handle myself if I need to. And I like that mentality. I don't want to see Nylander fight or Marner or Matthews or any of the big guys. But guess what? Every big name star that has gone on to do something in the NHL, Nathan McKinnon, Steven Stamkos, Sidney Crosby, have all dropped the mitts and shown other third, fourth line guys who are taking liberties on them that they do not take that crap for a moment.
Yep.
And they've stood up for themselves and gotten it done. And that galvanizes a team. I'll use that word as many times as I need to, because it puts them all together. Like you just said, well, if he's willing to do it, I'm willing to do it. If I'm willing to do it, you better be willing to do it. And then it's a whole bunch of guys that are just together rolling through people who don't take liberties anymore. That doesn't happen. They got Ryan Reeves to be basically, what did one person call it? The policeman on the bench.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a cop sitting on the side of the road. He's there. You're not going to speed. So Ryan Reeves was supposed to be there. He's on the bench. You're not going to take a cheap shot. Well, how about having an entire bench of those guys who, if you run one of their guys, someone is coming after you whether you want it to
Yeah.
happen or not. And I love that. I
Yeah.
love it because
Or
you
even
need it in the playoffs.
Yeah, or even the board battles. Even the board battles, now you know if you admire your pass, 22 is coming for you.
I love it.
If you're trying to go into the trying to go into the corner, for example, and win a puck, 18's coming for you. And it's just like en masse, like more and more players are getting comfortable with it. And then even when it comes to just like the overall raw defensive stuff, blocking shots. Yes, this team has always been willing to block shots, but I'm talking about getting in the way of like painful shots. I'm watching Timothy Liljegren again, who just came back from injury, turning around, blocking a shot. I'm seeing William Lagesson dive across the crease and rob Sidney Crosby. That did not get enough attention.
No, it didn't, but it was amazing.
But he robbed him blind. It was an open net tap-in power play goal, robbed him blind. So it's like the physicality, the effort, the will just to win and get 2 points, I think is so significant for this team.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some significance on the wins and stuff like that in just a moment. Before we move to the media perception on the board there, I want to talk about the goaltending here. For me, and this is just strictly my perception on it, other people have different views. It looks like this team competes a whole hell of a lot harder in front of Joe Woll and Martin Jones than we've seen out of efforts in front of Samsonov. And I'm not saying anything bad about Sammy, but at the same time, it seems like the comfort level with Woll and now Jones in net is different than that of Samsonov. And I know they battle back against CBJ, but it always seems like they're hanging 1, 2, maybe 3 on Samsonov, and he can't find his footing. And I know some are on him, yes. But a shot on goal, as we've always been told, is a failure of your defense because your goaltender is supposed to be your last line of defense to stop the puck. Yeah. So defenses are supposed to strip the puck, block the shot, do whatever to move the guy into an unfavorable shooting lane to make it, like you said on the weekend about Martin Jones, having shots that were of no consequence. But when Sammy's in net, it doesn't seem to be that way. So I want to know, when Joe Woll comes back, who are you more comfortable having as a tandem? And I know we have a small sample size with the Leafs of Martin Jones, but he did some things with the Seattle Kraken last year, had the same amount of wins as Samsonov did. I'm wondering if we might see a Woll-Jones thing if Sammy can't find his confidence. Would you be all right with that?
Definitely. I mean, this is what it comes down to. And obviously the big conversation came up around, Samsonov's latest start against Columbus, where the Leafs, like, 2 things were true. I saw a lot of people just sticking to like one side of the conversation. There were 2 things that were true. The Leafs were horrendous in their own zone in those first 2 periods.
Oh, it was insane.
And Samsonov, you need to give them at least 1 or 2 of those back. And it's not fair, but that's the nature of the position. And the thing about goaltending is that the best goaltenders are the best goaltenders because they stop the goals that should be goals. Right?
I'll give you that, yep.
We love Joseph Woll because that game before he left, there were at least 3 saves that should have been goals.
I counted 6.
Yeah, at least 3. Like cold, like maybe 2 or 3 you could like kind of argue, but like at least 3 stone cold, those should be goals, and he stopped them.
Yeah.
Right? Jones is not as, I don't know, active in the net as Samsonov is. He makes his minuscule movements. He'll make his side-to-side movements. If he does come out of the net, again, you don't trust that anything is going to go wrong, right? So as far as just watching what we've seen from both, I'm more comfortable in a Woll-Jones tandem than a Woll-Samsonov tandem. Yep. Now, another thing too is in the event when that Woll is healthy, Martin Jones isn't breaking through waivers. He's not. I don't know off the top of my head what the goaltending situation is around the league, but I would be very shocked if, again, you look at a goalie who is putting up like really good numbers, has a shutout, and goes unclaimed off of waivers. I'd be very shocked. So the Leafs are going to have. Yeah, I don't think he's making. Yeah, I agree. So right now, again, I'm more comfortable with Woll and Jones. I'm not saying that Samsonov was a horrible goaltender,
Nope.
because again, like last year, he showed that he can do it. He can make a lot of those. Hey, that should have been a goal, but it wasn't saves. Like again, like the Sammy Smiles era was so
Yes.
significant because again, we loved all of the saves that we were getting. But at the end of the day, it's only about what have you done for us lately. And
Yep.
lately, if we're ranking the three goalies in on the Leafs right now, it's Woll, Jones, Samsonov, and
Yep.
it cannot be argued. So right now, I'm rolling with those two.
No, I'm fully with you. And I mean, we have a little while before Joe Woll gets back. I mean, it's a high ankle sprain, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Everyone needs to remember, too, that 4 to 6 weeks, he needs to be able to go and push off on that ankle, go post to post, and slam that ankle into a post to lock down that position. Good luck doing that with any iota of pain. You have to be pain-free. So when he's pain-free, he'll be back. And I say this because Sidney Crosby had a high ankle sprain, and he was out for a long time because he just could not get the pain managed. So imagine now putting that on a goaltending position where you're pivoting all the time off that ankle and pushing as hard as you can. It's going to be a bit. So we'll see Sammy and we'll see Jones, and hopefully Sammy can come back and rebound a little bit. But right now, I agree with you full-heartedly. I thought about it on Saturday night, and a lot of people were saying, well, trade Samsonov now. Well, no. You need some stability right now. Let's not put the cart before the horse. And everybody's like, well, bring up the Hildebeest. I'm like, whoa.
Leave him there, man.
Let him cook.
Yeah, exactly. Leave him there. Let him cook. And to your point, the Leafs have the time. Like they have the time. Even at the end of the 6 weeks, like Woll's at like 95. Take your time. Like unless it's an issue where we get to a point where like both Samsonov and Jones are unplayable, knocks on wood. I think they have the time and they should definitely use it. Like they're in no rush to get Woll back in the net.
No, and with the touch on the Hildebeest thing, right quick, guys, let the man come in and command the crease in the AHL, like Joel Woll did. Let him get his confidence. Maybe towards the end of the season when you're winding guys down to kind of get them ready for the playoffs, maybe he sneaks in a couple of games just to give him a taste as a reward for what he's done in the AHL. But even that, if the Marlies are rolling, you probably won't see it. But just pump the brakes on that one. They're not trading Sammy to bring up another rookie. So let's just go with Woll and see what he does. But one thing we were talking about was this team grinding it out and getting points. And I loved a quote from Mitch Marner, I think it was a week or so ago, where the Leafs obviously didn't have a lot of regulation wins, but they were picking up wins, picking up points in a lot of games and rolling. Most teams, if that is happening, media is like, man, this team is really gutting it out. They're missing players. They're doing so well. They're picking up points. They're staying in the hunt. They're doing all the things they need to do. This team is really together. Now here in Toronto, the media is like, well, how come they don't have regulation wins? This team's not really winning in regulation. This team's not doing so great. May I add, 3 of your top defensemen that are supposed to be in your lineup, Klingberg, I know everybody says he's not a great player for the Leafs. I get that. But he was penciled in as one of your top 6. Giordano and Liljegren injured. I'm saying 3 gone. The guy who was supposed to be your starter was shaky. You're running with a rookie goaltender, and you guys are still grinding out points. To me, that's gutsy. That's what you need to see out of this team. I'm impressed. Why is the Toronto media as a whole not impressed? Because any other market, this would be the biggest story of how this team is triumphing over all of the injuries and adversity in front of them.
So I'll admit, like right off the bat, that I've definitely been guilty of the hyper focus on the regulation wins, and I think it's because I think one of the main reasons is especially like the fan base and the media are trying to hold the Leafs to a higher standard.
I get that.
A much higher standard, and again, and I think for whether it's right or wrong, it's the reality that's taking place. And I think when you're watching the way in which the points are happening, sometimes it's from the idea of the Leafs being down and then getting to overtime and then getting a point, stealing a point, or other times is that they had the lead, gave up the lead, it got to overtime, and then they lost the game anyway. So I think it's a mixed bag of things, whether it's the idea of, okay, well, did they steal a point or did they lose a point? did they get the game to overtime or a shootout, or did they fail to hold on to a lead in a game that they probably should have continued to hold on to the lead and then lose the game in that way? I think
Yep.
I think there's a lot of hyper focus on individual performances as well. I think when you're looking at players and hoping that they play better, I think when you're looking at players that you expect a lot more from, especially when it comes to the star players, for example. For the longest time, Nylander was running the show. Austin Matthews was scoring a whole bunch of goals. Marner would have games where he would look like himself, and then games where he wouldn't. The fourth line situation. So I think it was like a mixed bag of things, but I do think a lot of it is the idea of a lot of pessimism, and
Yep.
mainly pessimism because of where a lot of people want the team to be. I do think that whether people want to admit it or not, there are a lot of, I guess, I don't know, hung on negativity and frustration from how the playoffs ended last year. They won a round and then lost in 5 games.
Yep.
They were down 3-0, and they couldn't score goals against a team who, for all intents and purposes, if Pittsburgh didn't blow it, let's just call a spade a spade. If Pittsburgh didn't blow their season,
Yep.
Florida wouldn't have been there, straight up. So I think a lot of people are holding on to that, and there's still so much like a I guess, for lack of better words, anxiety and hyper focus and extra caution on the team, is that we're so desperate to have the team be good, legitimately good, not just like good for like 1 game or 2 games, but
Yep.
good for like a long number of stretches, that we're willing to always take the glass half empty approach as opposed to the glass half full approach. And again, I've been a victim of that as well. When we're in that full area of like, oh, the Leafs only have 5 regulation wins, just like San Jose and Ottawa and Columbus or whatever. But again, not noticing the fact that like, well, yeah, but they're also like not losing a regulation as well, so they're getting points. And I think when the point we are at the season now, where we're mid to late December, and you look at the standings, it's like, okay, yeah, I think we've been focusing on the wrong thing, because like as it stands, Leafs are what, 3rd in the conference. They're like 6th in the league. They have the 2nd division spot in the Atlantic.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, points are points, and I think now people are hopefully more willing to see that positive side. I know I am. I'm trying to focus on that positive aspect a little bit more, but I think it's the expectation and the desire for the team to be good that makes people focus more on the negative. And unfortunately, one of those negatives was the number of regulation wins they had.
Yeah, I always look at it like this for myself. And I mean, you know me by now. I'm Mr. Positive, always think the Leafs are going to win and always pumping up the tires. I hate dwelling on the negative. There's way too much negative in the world to sit and dwell on a negative for a hockey team. I look at it like this. There are many games this year where last year or even the years previous where the Maple Leafs would be down 1 or 2 goals, and that would be it. The shoulders would slump, the heads would be down, the effort would slip, and that's it. They would just be willing to lose that game and no problem. They would shake it off and that's it. Move on to the next one. Not this season. They have battled back, and 6 times they've gone, and lost the extra point in overtime, but they've battled to get to that point. I know there's times where they've blown their own leads and lost the game as well. I get that. But I look at the positives of battling back, and the Columbus game, there's recent memories, one of those things where they clawed back. Hey, they did it to Tampa in the playoffs in the 3rd period. 4-1, came back and won. Those things to me matter, because when you build those skills to be able to battle back and compete in a game and get yourself to the extra frame or get yourself even, and know that you can do that on a continual basis, not that you want to do it all the time. I get that. But I get the fact you also need to build that skill where it's not over till we say it's over, and we have the ability to come back from 5-0 and tie the game. Hey, we can do that. That's now in our toolbox. We know we can figure it out. Here's how we did that. Okay, so that is one thing they can use. And I look at all of the other stuff, the regulation wins. The Leafs are sitting with only 6 regulation losses. Why is that not talked about? Yeah. They're up there with the Boston Bruins, for crying out loud. Only 6 regulation losses. Not too shabby for a team that everybody's crying not having the regulation win. So take the good with the bad, folks. I think the Maple Leafs right now, they're learning some hard lessons with injuries in the lineup, but they're still getting points. And like you said, second in the Atlantic, third in the Eastern Conference. I will take that gladly because you could be looking on the outside of the playoffs, looking in. Hi, Habs fans. It could happen.
Amen. Not even the
I had to get it.
Sens fans too.
Oh man!
Remember in the summer when the Leafs had to be careful of the Sens. Remember that?
Oh yeah, they're top 6. John, I know you listen to every episode. I love you, John Trottier, the PA voice of the Sens. You're a good buddy. I'm not crapping on them. I always called them pesky Sens, and I picked them to make the playoffs this year. But there is no way in the world right now that they are better than the Maple Leafs. No way.
Yep.
Figure it out, though. I hope you guys do turn a corner and figure something out over there.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing for me on the weekend, obviously, we heard the crowd chanting Dubas. TV, they tried to silence it out as much as they could.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't pick it up on the broadcast too much until you started seeing all the unsilenced videos, shall we say, of them getting after Dubas. It was pretty funny. Obviously, for me, I don't see there's any reason to hate on Dubas.
Same.
He asked for what he needed to be able to run this team. They were not willing to go there. So he went to Pittsburgh. He set this team up to eat. Matthew Nyes, Topi Nemela's coming. You look at Pontus Holmberg, you look at McMahon. All of these, Dubas's fingerprints are all over. You can be excited about the Bertuzzis and the Domis and everything else coming in, but everything else that is around this lineup, even John Tavares, is because of Kyle Dubas.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be so quick just to boo the guy because it's fun, because it's the trending thing to do. Kyle Dubas set the table here for Maple Leaf fans, and hopefully we get to eat the meal, and he's not there. But I'm just saying, there's no reason to boo the guy. Are you the same boat here? Because I don't get it.
Yeah, I got a lot of requests over the night saying like, "Oh, you gotta give Dubas' reaction to that." I'm like, I'm not gonna do that because again, I just didn't understand the point to it. It's not it's the entire story and the series of events that happened with it were very weird. But again, once all the information came out, it made sense. Dubas wanted more autonomy and more power to do things, and Brendan Shanahan said no.
It's a let me do my job thing. He wanted to be able to do his job. And they said, well, no, we need to make sure that we have 17 chains of command. And if you don't like that, go somewhere else. And he said, okay, I don't like that. And
exactly. And he went to a place where he is not only the GM, he's also the president. So he doesn't have to like ask someone permission to make a deal or get a final approval on it. He can make those deals. He can make those decisions. So it makes sense. So I don't know. It'd be one thing if he was just like, oh, screw Toronto. They never did anything for me. I hope this team sucks. And I hope they never win anything and then left. Like, no, I mean, like, I think for the longest time he had the intention of saying, and again, what if you go back to Brendan Shanahan's presser on it, explaining it, there was never a point where he said that Kyle Dubas said he didn't want to be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs anymore. It was Brendan Shanahan who just felt that Dubas wasn't the person for the job because of X, Y, and Z. I know, again, the autonomy aspect comes up, but besides that, a lot of the things that you're watching on this team that you like, that's Kyle, man. Matthew Nyes, that's Kyle. Bobby McMahon, as you said, that's Kyle. Nick Robertson, that's Kyle. You know what I mean? So Joseph Wall.
Yep.
Yeah, he was around for that. Yeah, 2016. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I get it. You know, also it's just fun, I guess. You know, if you're a person that just wanted to do it, I get it. But like, I don't know. It's something I didn't really understand it, and I don't have any ill will or any frustration for Dubas. It was just unfortunate, and I think it would have been nice to see Dubas kind of finish what he started.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know what? Like GMs move on. Like it happens. GMs get fired. It takes place, and you know what? I don't spend any time thinking about Kyle Dubas because he's not my GM anymore. For actually living.
No, but he seems to live rent free in a lot of Leafs fans' head.
Yeah, we're getting in that category, Leafs fans. Like, so the next time you call a Sens fan or a Canucks fan, you know, rent free, maybe take a second.
Yeah, just pause for the cause. Pause for the cause, man. They recently announced that they might be doing something with the World Cup here. And it's only going to be 4 teams. I wanted to get your opinion on this because we all do get excited for the World Cup, but this is no World Cup. This is a 4-country tournament. That's it. For me, if you want a World Cup, you got to have a lot more people involved, a lot more teams involved. I get the geopolitical stuff with Russia, but there is a lot of different teams, and you're missing out on a lot of marquee players that will not be in this tournament if you do not have them in there. I want to know for you what you think.
That's my issue with it, is that if you're only having these 4 teams, which for my understanding will be Canada, US, Sweden, and Finland, I think.
Yep.
So if you're only having those 4 teams, then again, there are a lot of players that you're missing. And again, a lot of people will say, okay, well, what about just, we're not focused on the Russian players. Like, no, but they're like Czech players. There are Latvian players. There are Swiss players. There are German players. Leon Draisaitl cannot play at this tournament. Leon Draisaitl. So I don't like I think it makes more sense to do like a continent thing, like a North America versus Europe, and then maybe you can have like more internal competition to be on those rosters. I don't know, maybe you expand them a little bit, but I think that makes.
Why not just call it the NHL Cup?
Well,
do North America versus Europe.
Exactly.
Bam.
Yeah, I don't. That does not make sense to me at all because you're skewing the product again.
Yep.
You're cutting off star players from being able to participate in this thing again. And let's call a spade a spade. You're giving the players a tournament that they're not really going to care about. The players have said that they want the Olympics because it's best on best. This isn't going to be best on best. The World Cup of Hockey ended up being fun because Team North America was sick. And no one saw that coming. It was a crazy team. But at the end of the day, like it still wasn't best on best. And this isn't going to be best on best. In fact, I think it's probably going to be worse than when we saw the World Cup of Hockey, again, because of all the players that are just not going to be there just by default. So, sure, do this to get the check mark and say, hey, look at that. We gave you international competition. But like, it's not going to be the same, man. It really isn't. So, I don't know. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's too late to make changes, but I hope they do in some way, shape, or form.
I think they are going to make changes after the backlash they got. And here's the thing: you're 100% right, and I've said this before. This is simply Gary Bettman going, "I'm giving you what you wanted. There's your World Cup. Why aren't you happy? I have no idea. I don't understand. When we polled everyone, they were excited about this. Well, because it's not actually a World Cup, Gary. It's not.
No.
I'm sorry to say it, but a World Cup involves more than 4 countries and more of your star players. So, like you said, maybe do North America versus Europe and just have an NHL Cup. They play 7 games. Whoever wins it, and away you go. But at least you get all of your marquee players, and you can rotate guys in and out if you need to expand the rosters.
Yeah, exactly. Because like at this point, if they go on with this 4-country cup, whatever, you're gonna have like remember that Phil Kessel tweet when he didn't get to make the American team. You're gonna get that times like 1,000 because you're gonna have so many players just like watching this and say like, oh wow, oh yeah, it's so great. These 4 teams. I don't know, like this is going to be just so much.
Do you not want to see Leon versus Connor? Come on, guys.
Like so many missed opportunities. Like, no, cool that how sick that would be. Oh, like Stützle versus Brady Tkachuk. Like
Matthews versus Marner.
Oh my gosh, like so many missed opportunities. So I don't know.
Here's one, folks.
Yeah,
it will happen. This one can happen because of the teams that will be there. Matthews versus William Nylander. That one will be fun. We can talk about that. That's got some meat on the bone. But then you look at that one, you're so excited, but then you're like, but what about Pasta? You're not getting Pasta. So you're missing out on so much. So I don't like the idea. Will I watch? Probably. Just because. But at the same time, I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to hate watching this. That's all it's going to be.
Exactly.
The other thing I want to talk to you about before I let you go tonight, my friend, thank you always so much for all your time. The hitting from behind issue that has cropped up in the NHL.
Oh, man.
It's taking on a life of its own, and it is getting more and more a hot button issue. And we saw what Branson did, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, the NHL is just not cramping down on this like they did with the cross checks, like they did with the slashing, like they did with the hooking, where penalties escalated, whether it was a small infraction or a large one. They made it known that this cannot happen. The
Mhm.
NHL has the ability to do this shit again. And I know it will take players some time to figure it out. But the ones that were bad were real bad, but there's still smaller ones that are guys are not getting up normally from. It happened in the Leaf game. It happened Saturday night. It happened every game you watch. There's one or two instances where you're like, ooh, that doesn't look like it's a good one. I'm
Mhm.
wondering for you, what has to happen here? Is it more of the Gabranson thing that happens before the NHL reacts, or is the NHL maybe waiting till the Christmas break, coming back and saying, this is the new memo of operandum that we're working off of for hits from behind, or even just dangerous plays along the boards?
There was a stretch, I'd say, like the first like 2 or 3 weeks of the season, where NHL player safety was correct
Mm-hmm.
twice. The Rasmus Anderson hit on Patrick Laine, correct, good call. The Charlie McAvoy suspension, correct, good decision. And then ever since, they've gone right back to their we don't know what's going to be what the decision is going to be.
Yeah.
And this is something I've repeated for like years and years and years, is that the sport of hockey in the NHL is at its most dangerous when players do not know what they can and cannot do.
Where the
So
line is. Yeah.
where the line is. So I'm watching Nick Cousins throw a dangerous hit on Eric Branson, no call, right? Like there's no supplementary discipline. So Eric Branson says, okay, I'm going to take it upon myself to throw some discipline there.
Yeah.
Does so and gets suspended. That's ridiculous. I don't know what the behind the scenes were was for that, but I hope like Branson like at least entertain the idea of like appealing that, because if I'm him, I'm saying, okay, so I'm getting a game for this, but what is he getting? He gets nothing. He gets scot free. Right? If the hit changes like an inch, a millimeter, whatever, maybe he's not able to walk. Maybe he gets a concussion. Like, why are
Yep.
we focusing on that? It's NHL player safety. So to
Not
answer
just
your
NHL
question,
player discipline, it's NHL
exactly,
player safety. Yep.
safety. So to your point, James, I think unfortunately, what is it going to take for the league to change something? Someone's going to have to get really hurt.
Or someone's
And
going to have to take it into their own hands and really
exactly.
hurt someone. And then
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be like, oh, well, maybe we should have kept it a major. Because if
Yeah.
they kept that Cousins hit a major,
Yep.
then what happened with Gabranson does not happen. But they changed it to a minor. And I don't know
Yeah.
how, in what category you change that to a minor.
Yeah.
Keep it safe and just let that be a 5 and let players know you can't cross that line.
Honestly, like I don't understand. Like, they want to get things right, putting that in air quotes,
Yep.
right? But I think in this new era of trying to get things right, they rarely are. So to be honest, I'd be more comfortable with them over penalizing things than under penalizing. Give them throw double minor,
Yeah.
major, whatever, and then maybe you review it or something. But at the very least, the players then know, hey, okay, I can't do anything within this ballpark because I don't want to get a major, or I don't want to get a double minor because I don't want to cost my team. Then okay, then at least we can start to deal with it. But this whole idea of like, oh, it's case by case and we don't know, and we'll just let them play, it's dangerous and it's messy, and someone is going to get hurt. The game has never been as fast as it is now. You're having players up and down rosters who can fly.
Yeah.
Who can fly. And you have to take it out of the players' hands and decide to be a league, and protect the players. Because if you rely on the players to do it themselves, someone's going to get hurt. And if you don't do anything about it, someone's going to get hurt. So what would you rather do? Would you rather be seen as the league that just over penalizes things? Would you rather be proactive or reactive? And for years and years, the league always finds themselves being reactive. For once, be proactive. Because to your point, like the frequency of these hits this year has been shocking. And I'm surprised that things haven't been done about it now. And I think they have an opportunity to really start to get hold of this before it gets worse. And when I say before it gets worse, I'm talking about in the playoffs where the refs say, hey, do whatever you want. So I really don't want that to take place there. So I really hope they start to have those conversations now, because again, the frequency of it has been alarming, to say the least.
No, it's been insane, and that's why I brought it up on this one with you, because I like your opinion on these things.
Thank you.
I think the NHL has an opportunity. Like I said, I hope they use the Christmas break and say, hey,
Mhm.
this is what the new standard is. They send out a memo to the refs. They get it figured out. They get it drilled down. And for the rest of the season, we see the proper lines being set. They did it, like I said, with slashing, with cross-checking, tripping, stick infractions, all of those things. They went high with the penalties, and the infractions came down.
Yep.
Because the players understood where the line was and what they can do. This is a simple fix. It doesn't need to be thinking outside the box. This is pretty, hey, you do this, done. You're in the box. 2 minutes for this, 5 for that, game for the rest. If you want to squawk, you're gone. And we know there's going to be guys who will get hit, and there will be a fight afterwards, sticking up for teammates. That always happens. But what we're talking about here is what happened with Gabranson, where there was no discipline to the player, and the player felt he had to atone for what was not handed out. And that cannot happen, because bad things can happen in a hurry when you're skating with knives on your feet.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, my friend, I want to say thank you very much. You always make the time to come on. We always have a great chat. I want to say happy holidays to you and yours. Hope everything goes smoothly over the holidays.
Thank
and
you.
I do hope to get you back on close to the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then we'll see what they do maybe after the deadline, how they're looking going into the playoffs. Because I for one, do not want last year to be just the one. I don't want it to be a one and done. I hope they continue. I hope they fly. And I don't know. I've been a big proponent saying that if the Leafs make the final, they have to win, because I wouldn't recover. So
No, I don't think any of us would.
Oh, that would suck.
Listen, I will tell you this right now.
Mhm.
We are going on a run this year.
Yeah.
I just got a little – it seems like the right players this season have a little bit of hunger and the ability. And then you look at what we were talking about the bottom six and guys willing to step up and score and do the right things. That has not been there all the time. And I think Brad Treliving's got a little cap space too with that LTIR for Klingberg.
It's true.
And maybe, you put somebody else down in the minors here or there, free up a couple more $1 million, and then you go and grab a bona fide defenseman, slide yourself in another player that maybe be able to play in your top 9. But really right now, if it ain't broke up there, don't fix it. Let it roll, let it build, let it fester, and let these guys come together. But again, my friend, thank you so much for jumping on. Let's go get excited for the week, and appreciate you again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Leafs Nation, you know what it is around here. This is Offside Hockey Talk, where the Maple Leafs and hockey come to talk.